Staying true to yourself is everything. No one wants to hear a rapper pretending to be part of gang culture if they haven't lived it. For some artists, however, that authenticity runs deep. Take 50 Cent, for example. He survived being shot 9 times in a gang hit, defying the odds to completely transform his life. But for Lil Durk, his gang ties wouldn't let go, and now he's behind bars with his past finally catching up to him. Here's a look at 20 famous rappers who were once part of some of the most dangerous gangs. Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg wasn't always the calm, laid-back icon we know today. Growing up in a neighborhood surrounded by gang activity, he quickly became a member of the Rolling 20s Crips. But the gang life wasn't all about street credibility. Snoop has spoken about the violence that consumed his community, a cycle fueled by drugs, guns, and territorial conflicts. His past caught up with him in 1993 when he was charged as an accessory to murder, a case that nearly derailed his career. He's recalled how dehumanizing the court process was, with prosecutors portraying him as the same person he was during his gang days. Despite all that, Snoop's debut album, Doggy Style, introduced his street tales to the world, solidifying his status as a West Coast rap legend. Over time, though, Snoop distanced himself from the chaos of his past, evolving into the icon he is today.
Leave the gang culture behind because it was so connected to who I was, being an ex-gang member and then having that in my
2012,
music.
Snoop Dogg's transformation into Snoop Lion marked a powerful break from his past. It was a symbolic shedding of the old life he had once lived. Snoop spoke out against the violence he had been immersed in, with songs like No Guns Allowed reflecting his new outlook on life. This shift wasn't just about his music, it was a sign of his personal growth. Snoop used his past experiences as a foundation for building something greater. Today, he's not only a legendary artist but a cultural icon, proving that transformation is always possible, no matter where you start. But Snoop isn't the only rapper who's had to find a way to balance his past with his ambitions. The Game has a similar story. Growing up in Compton, his connection to gang life runs deep. Before he became one of hip-hop's biggest names, The Game was deeply involved in the streets as a member of the Cedar Block Pure Bloods. In his own words, he says, "I want to say I became a Blood when my brother became a Blood because that was who I looked up to." He's been open about how his experiences shaped his early mindset, but also how they fueled his drive to pursue something bigger. As he grew older, The Game found himself torn between two worlds: the streets and the pursuit of success in music. Over time, he began using his platform to address the very violence he once lived through, even hosting peace talks between rival Bloods and Crips. The Game's journey didn't stop at using his platform to make peace. He became a key figure in urging unity within Los Angeles, pushing for an end to the cycles of violence that had defined his past. From attempting to broker peace talks between rival Bloods and Crips to confronting the streets that never truly let go, his story is one of constant struggle between his old life and his new ambitions. The next story highlights how chasing bigger dreams can sometimes collide with the life you come from. Nipsey Hussle. Before becoming a celebrated rapper, entrepreneur, and community leader, Nipsey was a member of the Rolling 60s Crips, one of LA's most notorious gangs. For Nipsey, the Rolling 60s were not just about gang affiliation, they were family, protection, and a means of survival. But even as he immersed himself in that life, his mind was always on something greater. He wasn't content to be another statistic. Nipsey had a vision and ambition that set him apart from others in his community. He used his gang experiences as fuel for his music. The system couldn't fully let go of Nipsey Hussle, even as he worked to better his community. To the authorities, he was still a Rolling 60, no matter how much good he did. But as he grew, Nipsey flipped the script, using his platform to uplift South LA. He created businesses, provided opportunities, and preached ownership to a community that had long been systematically denied these chances. Despite all his efforts to change the narrative, his past affiliations with the streets were something the system couldn't easily overlook. On the other hand, Lil Wayne embraced his ties to the streets in a way that became central to his image in the rap game. Known for his unapologetic swagger and lyrical brilliance, Wayne's rise to fame was deeply tied to street life. Growing up in the Hollygrove neighborhood of New Orleans, Wayne found himself drawn into the world of gangs, where affiliations weren't just about culture, they were about survival. His connection to the Bloods has been a point of both admiration and controversy throughout his career. Never one to shy away from his roots, Wayne has always been vocal about his gang affiliation, using it as a key part of his identity in the music world. Lil Wayne's connection to the Bloods became a defining part of his image, with signs and videos featuring him donning the red bandana or shouting out the Bloods in his songs. He's even said in interviews that he's a gangbanger, proudly claiming the affiliation. For Wayne, wearing the red flag felt like a badge of honor, a way to stay grounded in the streets even as his fame skyrocketed. But Wayne himself has been open about the fact that his understanding of gang life was more about proximity than a deeply ingrained lifestyle. In a 2009 documentary, he admitted that he wasn't from LA and didn't know much about the Bloods and Crips. All he knew was that gang life wasn't a good thing. Yet, as his career progressed, his affiliation with the Bloods became a recurring theme in his music, helping to solidify his image as a rapper who, at least on the surface, lived the life he rapped about. Wayne's gang ties are complicated by the fact that his early years were spent navigating a world full of both inspiration and hardship. Growing up in a neighborhood plagued by violence and drugs, his stepfather, Rabbit, a street hustler, became Wayne's first real introduction to the streets. Wayne's role model, tragically, was his stepfather, Rabbit, who was killed when Wayne was just 14. This loss deeply impacted the young rapper and further cemented his bond with the streets. For Wayne, gang culture wasn't just a part of his identity, it was the environment that shaped his career. His lyrics often reflect the struggles and dangers of the life he witnessed around him, even if his personal involvement wasn't as deep as some might believe. The streets can be a powerful influence, and for this next rapper, they were everything before music provided an escape. 50 Cent is a prime example of someone whose life was shaped by the streets before he found success in the music industry. Before the fame, platinum plaques, and business ventures that made him a household name, 50 Cent was immersed in the gang culture of South Jamaica, Queens. His connection to the streets started early with the loss of his mother when he was just 8 years old. Raised in an environment where survival often came at a steep price, 50 was thrust into the harsh realities of life from a young age. By 12, he was fully involved in the crack epidemic of the 1980s, selling rocks and building a reputation as both a businessman and someone who couldn't be easily crossed. As a young hustler, Curtis Jackson navigated the dangers of the drug game, where violence, rivalries, and loss were part of the daily routine. Yet, even in the chaos, 50 Cent had bigger dreams. Music was his way out. But his transition wasn't simple. His early work, including the track Ghetto Koren, was a raw recount of life in the streets, naming names and exposing the harsh realities of the drug trade. This unflinching honesty brought him attention, but it also made him a target. The streets didn't forget his revelations, and neither did his enemies. In 2000, just as his career was starting to take off, 50 Cent's life took a dramatic turn. He was ambushed outside his grandmother's house, and a gunman opened fire, hitting him 9 times. The attack left him with his signature slurred speech and could have easily been the end of his story. But for 50 Cent, it became a defining turning point. As he recovered, he channeled his pain and anger into his music, doubling down on his commitment to rise above it all. As 50 Cent's career skyrocketed, he transitioned from the block to boardrooms, building an empire that extended far beyond rap. But before him, another artist had already laid the blueprint for flipping street hustle into hip-hop legacy: Eazy-E. Eazy-E, the godfather of gangsta rap, lived the streets of Compton in full color before becoming the face of NWA and a pioneer of West Coast hip-hop. He was hustling in the trenches, turning the harsh realities of his environment into the foundation for one of the most iconic movements in music history. By the age of 23, he had already made a name for himself as a dealer, saving up over $250,000 from selling drugs. However, unlike most, Eazy saw an exit strategy. He flipped that street money into a legitimate business, founding Ruthless Records, a move that not only changed his life but also shifted the course of hip-hop forever. While other members of NWA followed their own unique paths, Eazy was the one who truly embodied the gangsta rap lifestyle. He cruised in real 64 Impalas, hustled to survive, and turned his experiences into anthems that resonated with listeners far beyond Compton. What set Eazy apart was his ability to blend the streets with strategy. When the FBI sent a cease and desist letter for NW.A.'s controversial track, F-Tillies, Eazy didn't see it as a threat but as an opportunity. That letter became a badge of honor, boosting album sales and propelling NWA to cultural icon status. His persona, complete with a jerry curl, locked sunglasses, and a mischievous grin, became the face of Compton, of gangsta rap, and of a rebellious movement that changed music history. The movement that refused to be ignored was still alive, and decades later, another young hustler would rise from the struggles of his environment to carve out a name in Brooklyn's drill scene: Pop Smoke. Growing up in the gritty streets of Canarsie, Brooklyn, Pop Smoke wasn't handed much. His mother was Jamaican, his father Panamanian, and his upbringing was anything but easy. From a young age, Pop was exposed to the harsh realities of his environment. By the 8th grade, he was expelled from school for bringing a gun onto campus, a decision that set the tone for much of his teenage years. With house arrest, an ankle monitor, and limited freedom, Pop's future seemed uncertain. At 15, he showed promise outside the streets, landing a basketball scholarship in Philadelphia. But life had other plans. Diagnosed with a heart murmur, his basketball career ended just as quickly as it began. Pop found himself back in the streets, diving headfirst into the hustle. By the time he was 16, Pop was already behind the wheel of a BM5 series, a symbol of his street success. But he knew the lifestyle was dangerous and unsustainable. In 2018, an opportunity came knocking. What started as a casual studio session with his friend and fellow rapper Jay Guapo turned into the birth of Pop Smoke, the artist. When Jay Guapo fell asleep mid-session, Pop picked up the mic for the first time. Using YouTube drill beats, he recorded his first track, Mumper. The song quickly gained traction, pulling Pop into Brooklyn's burgeoning drill scene. Pop's connection to the streets was undeniable, but his newfound music career was a way out of path that would soon change his life forever. Life was entirely defined by survival, where every day in the streets was a battle to make it out alive. 21 Savage. Born in London, moved to Atlanta with his mom at age 7. Life in the city wasn't easy. By the time he was 13, he had already gravitated toward the streets, joining a local street gang, the 2100 in Decatur, Georgia. The streets shaped him in every way, pushing him deeper into the hustle. He dropped out of high school early, selling drugs, pulling robberies, and surviving shootouts. It was a matter of survival in a city where opportunities for kids like him were scarce. His music later became an outlet to tell these stories, but back then, it was all about living to see another day. For 21 Savage, the number 21 held an even deeper meaning. On his 21st birthday, one of his closest friends, Johnny, was murdered right in front of him. That same day, Savage himself was shot 6 times. The tragedy became a turning point in his life. The pain, the loss, and the constant danger gave him clarity. He had to find a way out. Music became that way out. At first, rapping was just a way to cope, but soon it became a serious pursuit. Savage's rise in the rap game was fueled by his survival story and the drive to escape the violence and hardship that had defined his early years. 21 Savage's authenticity set him apart in the rap game. His voice carried the weight of someone who had truly lived the life he rapped about. Even as his fame grew, he stayed connected to his roots. The losses he suffered never left him, and he turned that pain into purpose. In 2019, he launched the 21 Savage Bank Account campaign, named after his hit single Bank Account. The initiative focuses on teaching financial literacy to teens and kids, especially those from neighborhoods like the one he came from. It was a way for him to give back and equip the next generation with the tools to succeed in a world that hadn't always given him the same opportunities. Not every artist chooses to address their past so openly, though. Trippie Redd's connection to the streets surfaced in a way he couldn't control. His ties to the 59 Brims, a subset of the Bloods gang, were brought to light during a federal court case in 2019. The case, which centered on 6x99's racketeering trial, revealed a side of Trippie's past that many of his fans hadn't known. 6x99 claimed that Trippie was affiliated with the Brims, sparking public scrutiny of the rapper's gang ties. For Trippie, the gang affiliation was part of the environment he grew up in. Hailing from Canton, Ohio, his early life was filled with challenges, including the tragic loss of his brother and navigating a neighborhood where gang culture was a reality. Though Trippie has kept relatively quiet about his gang ties, it's clear that his past had an impact on his approach to music. He's let his artistry speak for itself, using his music to move beyond his past and create a new narrative. The 59 Brims might have been a chapter in his life, but Trippie is clearly focused on rewriting his story, showcasing growth and a desire for change through his music and public persona.
The significance of 1400 is it's my gang. Like, it's not, we don't use it in a gang-related fashion anymore because
Lil Durk's rise from the gritty streets of Chicago to global hip-hop stardom is a testament to resilience and the power of music as a form of expression. Growing up in Inglewood, one of the most violent neighborhoods in Chicago, gang culture was an ever-present reality for Durk. By 2009, he became affiliated with the Black Disciples, a connection that deeply influenced both his personal life and his music. At just 17, Durk was already a father and had found himself entrenched in the streets, turning to music as a potential way out. Durk's lyrics provide a raw and unfiltered glimpse into the struggles he faced growing up: gun violence, poverty, and systemic neglect. His music became not just a form of artistic expression, but a way to channel the pain of his environment. His first major legal issue came in 2011, when he served time for possessing a firearm with a defaced serial number, further cementing his ties to the street life.
One of my Muslim friends, brothers, and just politicking with them and talking to them, and I just decided to just convert over.
However, it was the tragic losses of his close friend King Von in 2020 and his brother DT Hang in 2021 that forced Durk to confront the violent cycle surrounding him. These personal tragedies served as a wake-up call, pushing him to reflect on his life and the impact of his past choices. As the controversies mounted, Durk began to make significant changes in his life, trying to move away from the path that had defined so much of his early years. Lil Baby's journey from the streets of Atlanta to becoming one of the most influential rappers of his generation is a testament to redemption and the transformative power of music. Growing up in the rough neighborhoods of Atlanta, Lil Baby was deeply involved in gangs, drugs, and crime by his teenage years. Despite showing academic potential, he chose to drop out of school, fully immersing himself in the hustle. By the age of 16, his street life escalated, and at 18, he violated his probation, leading to a prison sentence. It was during his time behind bars that Lil Baby began reflecting on his life choices. When he was released in 2016, he had a renewed sense of purpose. Encouraged by friends who saw potential in him beyond the streets, they pushed him to try rapping, even funding his first studio session. Although initially hesitant, Lil Baby soon discovered his passion for music. As his career blossomed, he distanced himself from the gang life that had once defined him, focusing instead on his craft and family. Today, he uses his past as a powerful lesson to others, showing that it's possible to break free from cycles of crime and violence. Birdman, a legend in his own right, also turned his street hustle into a blueprint for success, proving that survival skills from the block can translate into building an empire. Raised in the Magnolia Projects of New Orleans, Birdman, born Brian Williams, was deeply connected to the Bloods gang, a bond that formed long before the fame and fortune. The Magnolia Projects were unforgiving, and Birdman learned early on how to navigate the harsh realities of street life, aligning himself with others who understood the struggle. As he matured, Birdman began to see a way out of the cycle that had trapped so many people around him. The music industry became his escape route, and he applied the same street knowledge, loyalty, structure, and business acumen to build his empire. Founding Cash Money Records alongside his brother, Slim, Birdman transformed his street-smart mentality into one of the most successful music empires in hip-hop. His story is one of survival, hustle, and the ability to pivot from street life to boardroom success, showing how the lessons learned from the streets can serve as a foundation for building lasting wealth and influence in the business world. Used his position in the music industry to reframe his narrative, transitioning from street hustler to one of hip-hop's most innovative and influential artists. Growing up in Atlanta, Thug was heavily immersed in gang culture, specifically through his ties to IL's Young Slime Life, a group prosecutors have alleged was affiliated with the Bloods. From a young age, Young Thug's life and music were shaped by the harsh realities of street life. His lyrics, raw and unfiltered, reflected the struggles of survival, violence, and the deep connections to criminal activity around him. As his career progressed, the lines between his music and his lifestyle began to blur, drawing attention from both fans and authorities. His legal battles linked to the alleged activities of IL's created a shadow over his success, with some claiming that his role in the gang was more than just symbolic but indicative of his position as a leader. Despite these controversies, Young Thug's evolution into one of the genre's most innovative figures showcases his ability to escape the constraints of his environment. His music not only highlighted the brutal truths of his past, but also became a platform for his growth, eventually leading him to rise above the lifestyle that had once defined him. Blueface's immersion in gang culture was not a choice, but a product of his environment. It was the reality he grew up with, a survival mechanism in a community defined by its ties to gang life. From a young age, Blueface was entrenched in this culture, with it influencing everything from his friendships to his approach to the music industry. But his rise to fame came unexpectedly, with his viral hit Thotiana propelling him into the limelight. While the song was a playful, catchy anthem that resonated with fans, it also served as a reminder of Blueface's roots in the street life. His music often references his experiences in Los Angeles, but despite the fame, the pull of his past remained. He's spoken candidly about how his affiliation with the Crips played a significant role in his life, and even as he made his transition into the music business, it was clear that the streets were never far behind. However, as Blueface's career progressed, his focus shifted more towards securing his place in the industry and moving away from the distractions that came with gang life. While his street ties were still a part of his narrative, Blueface began to embrace the business side of music, using his platform to elevate himself beyond his previous lifestyle. He surrounded himself with a new team, including business partners and managers, all while maintaining a careful balance between his past and his future. In recent years, Blueface has worked to distance himself from the drama associated with his past, focusing more on his music and ventures outside of the street life. His personal transformation is evident as he continues to navigate the complexities of fame, showing that survival and success can come from leaving behind the very environment that once defined him. The Bloods in Compton, California, where gang culture was an omnipresent force shaping his world. Suge Knight's rise to prominence wasn't just as a figure in the music industry, it was intrinsically tied to his deep roots in street loyalty and the way he navigated life with the survival instincts of someone from the streets. He became one of the most feared figures in the music world, leveraging his street connections to build Death Row Records, one of the most influential and controversial labels in hip-hop history. From the beginning, Knight's persona and business style were shaped by his ties to the streets. His tough reputation wasn't just for show. Suge's involvement in gang culture and his no-nonsense approach to business were often blurred, especially when dealing with artists and competitors. He was known for his aggressive tactics, which were reflective of the street mentality that governed his life in Compton. As Death Row Records exploded onto the scene, it became more than just a record label, it was a symbol of street power and success in the music world. However, as his empire grew, so did the risks. The same survival tactics that helped Suge climb to the top also led to his eventual downfall. His violent methods and shady dealings caught up with him, and by the late 90s and early 2000s, Suge was entangled in numerous legal issues. The combination of his criminal past and volatile business practices created a storm that would eventually unravel the empire he'd built. His ties to unsavory figures, both in the street world and the music industry, made him a target for law enforcement, and his violent reputation only added fuel to the fire. In 2015, Knight's legal troubles culminated in his conviction for murder and attempted murder after an incident where he struck two men with his truck. His downfall was a tragic reminder of how the streets, while offering a path to power, can also lead to destruction. Suge Knight, once a towering figure in hip-hop, found himself locked away, his empire crumbling around him. His story is a stark reflection of how deep ties to gang culture can both empower and destroy, leaving a legacy defined by both triumph and tragedy. Knight's story highlights the fine line between success and self-destruction for those who come from environments where loyalty and street codes are everything. In the end, Suge Knight became a cautionary tale of what happens when loyalty to the streets overtakes everything else. The rise of his empire couldn't shield him from the eventual consequences of his past. Choosing to distance himself from the street life that had once shaped his early years and rise to fame, Jay-Z, unlike some of his peers who remained deeply entangled in their past affiliations, chose to redefine himself both in business and music. Growing up in Brooklyn, Jay-Z was no stranger to the streets, having lived through the harsh realities of drug dealing and neighborhood violence. However, as his career progressed, he made a conscious effort to move beyond the street life and focus on building an empire that would eventually span beyond music into various industries, including fashion, sports, and entertainment. Jay-Z's transition from the streets to corporate success was marked by his ability to create a brand that capitalized on his authenticity and street knowledge without being directly tethered to the violence and chaos that came with it. His business acumen, from founding Rockefeller Records to later acquisitions like Tidal and his partnership with companies like Live Nation, reflected his drive to move past the limitations of his environment and reshape his legacy. Spoken about how deeply his ties to the streets were, particularly during his rise to fame, Soulja Boy, like many artists, used his affiliation with the Fruittown Peru, a blood gang set in Compton, to solidify his reputation and identity within the hip-hop community. In his early years, Soulja wasn't simply rapping about the struggles of the streets, he was living them. The gang ties were more than just an image or a gimmick for clout, they were a part of who he was, influencing both his music and his journey through the music industry. When Soulja Boy first emerged on the scene with his viral dance moves and hits like Crank That, he quickly became a household name. However, behind the viral success was a complex figure deeply tied to the streets. His connection to the Bloods was not just about affiliation, it was embedded in the fabric of his early experiences. The pressures of balancing street life and mainstream fame were not lost on him, and as his career progressed, the pull between the two worlds became more intense. Soulja's relationship with his gang ties played a significant role in his rise to stardom, but it also fueled numerous controversies. The infamous beef with Chris Brown, in particular, became highly publicized, with both parties claiming blood affiliation, further entangling Soulja in his street persona. Yet, over time, his focus shifted more toward his business ventures and music. While his past has never fully been abandoned, Soulja Boy learned to navigate his success with a more business-oriented mindset, using his platform to build an empire that now includes ventures in technology, fashion, and online content. Despite the tumultuous early years, Soulja's story serves as a reminder of the duality that many artists face, the struggle between staying true to their origins and evolving into successful, multifaceted figures. While his gang ties never completely disappeared, Soulja Boy used his platform to transform the way he was viewed, moving beyond the streets and into a more expansive vision for his future. Fredo Bang's story is a reflection of the constant tension between music industry success and the unshakable grip of street life. Hailing from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Fredo's affiliation with the top boy guerrilla, Teague, has long been a defining part of his identity. The violence and tensions associated with his crew shape both his reputation and his music, often blurring the lines between art and reality. In 2016, Fredo's life took a darker turn when he was charged with attempted murder after a shooting outside an apartment complex. While he avoided significant prison time, the incident left a permanent mark on his career, and the streets he came from seemed to keep pulling him back. Fredo's ties to the street life were never far from the public eye, and his career was constantly intertwined with his past. Fast forward to 2021, and Fredo was trying to move forward, living in Miami. However, the law never let him go. A federal raid on his home uncovered body armor, firearms, and a stolen vehicle, sparking further allegations of parole violations. Fredo's team defended him, claiming the weapons were for personal security, but the incident was a stark reminder that his past had a way of following him, no matter how far he tried to distance himself. Adding fuel to the fire was the ongoing feud between Tib B and NB of One Boys Camp, a rivalry marked by deadly violence and public scrutiny. The war between these two factions turned into a full-blown street conflict, with both sides under constant investigation by law enforcement. Fredo's music, his brand, and his connections all became entangled in this deadly feud, and his rise as a rap star was shadowed by the realities of his affiliations. Fredo Bang's journey underscores the challenge of breaking free from the streets even when fame and fortune offer a way out. His struggle reflects the complex relationship between music and street life, where past actions and affiliations can follow you even as you try to build a new future. Despite his efforts to shift his focus to his career, Fredo's ties to the streets remain a constant challenge, one that continues to affect both his personal life and professional trajectory.